A heads up.
Volume on this.
All right.
While we were there.
John, we're going. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to call into order a special real property committee meeting. It's 10 a.m. Thursday, October the 20th. And I would also like to acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. I won't do a roll call because all of our committee members are here. Council member Katie Myers, Council member Kevin Popson, and of course, myself, Rusty Streetland. So we all are in attendance. And I'd also like to acknowledge too that, you know, this subject that we're going to be discussing today was referred back to Real Property Committee meeting from City Council. They asked us to go back and to look at the items that we'll be discussing today and make some recommendations to council. And of course, we'll have a council meeting next week, next Tuesday on the 25th, I think it is. We're having it a little bit later than we normally would have liked to, but it took us several weeks to really get this scheduled because of everybody's meeting obligations and travel obligations, that sort of thing. So nobody's fault at all, other than we tried to get all the stakeholders and interested parties on board before we could have the meeting. So we landed on today, the 20th. So anyway, our first order of business is going to be citizens' comments. So Nicole, do we have any comments from citizens? Okay, no citizens' comments. All right, so our purpose here today are twofold, and we'll just go right down the line one by one. And again, today we will be having some discussion, and we ultimately coming out of this committee will be making some recommendations to full council for next week. So item A, discussion of parking layout options for the intercoastal side of the marina to eliminate shared parking area and establish city parking and green space area and consolidated / expand Islander 71's exclusive parking lot. So that's our first item under consideration here. So Desiree or Douglas, do any of you want to preface our remarks and talk about how we got here and what we're looking at this point before we move into next steps?
I do.
Okay.
All right. Yes. It feels like ages ago that we started talking about this, but it was only last month. So what you all are going to be discussing and hearing from, did this work? No, okay, all good. Can you get in the password? Yes. Yes, they should be working. Can y'all hear me
Yeah.
loud?
Now
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
So what you all are going to be discussing and talking through is options for the reconfiguration of the parking lot at the marina that I keep saying it's north of the boat ramp. I know that's not north, but you know what I'm talking about, this intercoastal side of and the restaurant side of the marina property. As you all remember, that part of the lease to the new owner, operator of the marina, does not include control, ownership, or management of any of the parking spaces along that side, what we call the shared parking lot and the private parking lot. John Bushnell had a great idea that this gives us an opportunity to maybe reconfigure that in a way that maximizes parking for both his operation and provides the city with an opportunity of creating a city dedicated parking lot where the city can accommodate additional resident only parking spaces and trailer parking spaces as well. So when we started having these discussions, we met with the restaurant folks. We also hired Matt Klein, who is the engineer that they have been using for their parking layout, and thought that he would be the best person since he has worked with Mike Schuler as well, designed Mike Schuler's portion of the property for his parking layout, and has worked with John and the restaurant folks, that it would be good to have the same person draw some options for we all to consider. So what we are looking for is guidance from council, and particularly, obviously, this committee was was referred to by council about what the city wants to see in whatever iteration we agree on and approve, and obviously with the um, efforts and the agreement, if you will, of the restaurant to ensure that that whole side of the marina fits our needs and fits their needs as well. So, we have Matt Klein here. I'm glad that he was able to make it. None of us are engineers that I know of. So I think it would be good to kind of have him walk through what he's done for the restaurant, what he's done for us. And there's multiple iterations of what has been developed, and it's been a lot of time working on it back and forth. He can talk to that. I can think he can speak to that better than I can. And then we can just hear from the restaurant and kind of understand what their desires are, what their needs are, and kind of their position on the different layouts. And then we can kind of go from there.
Okay.
I just want to say that I think that this is a very unique and a great opportunity that we have to redesign something that, again, fits everybody's needs and gives us an opportunity to kind of start over in a way, in a more efficient and thoughtful way when it comes to parking at the marina. Because obviously we need a lot more than we have. So anytime we have an opportunity to maximize this, I think it's a great thing for the city and for everybody involved.
All right. Thank you, Desiree, for the background and the comments. And I'm going to ask if there are any council members that want to weigh in at this point before we get started. So, Council Member Hobson.
First of all, thanks, Mr. Chairman, for calling this meeting. It's so nice to be back at the committee level. But I do have a question, Desiree. Do we know if Mr. Schuler and Mr. Berrigan have done their deal? Has it been completed?
They have not closed yet. I have talked to both Brian and Mr. Schuler to kind of get an update on where they are. Mr. Schuler indicated that they are planning on closing by mid-November, so a couple more weeks. They are clearly working through really, really heavily on this transition. His team has reached out to us multiple times. They've met with me. They met with Debbie Suggs. And they're also meeting with our fire chiefs, just doing introductions. So it's moving along, but I think that the final closing is set for 3 to 4 weeks, I believe.
Okay. So technically, Chairman, so the residents know that currently, till that deal closes, the shared parking and the employee parking are still under the control of both the restaurant and Brian. Sorry.
Yes, right now we're status quo. None of this, I guess, happens until the deal is consummated.
Consummated.
That sounds weird, but anyway, when that happens, but planning, knowing that that's happening and everything's leading in that direction, council has approved leases, they're clearly working on that transition. Then I think it's a good opportunity to kind of start talking through what that would look like so that we are ahead of the game, if you will.
Okay.
Totally agree. So,
Councilmember Myers, anything to add? Get started. Okay. Thank you very much. So again, Desiree, thank you for teeing that up and for the background information. That's really helpful because it's been quite a length of time that we've been dealing with this. And again, it took us quite a while to get this very important meeting scheduled. And again, to remind the public, coming out of this, we won't be making final decisions today, but we will, as a committee, be making recommendations to full council for consideration. So with that, Desiree had mentioned Matt Klein, who is a traffic engineer, and he's here with us today. And we would ask that that Mr. Klein, walk us through the different options here. And so, Matt, if you just kind of identify yourself and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then get started on that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Matt, let me make sure that your mic is on.
Yeah.
John, is it? One more week.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Are we good?
So
There we go. You're good, Matt.
Yep, you'll be right up on it.
that's aggressive. So my name is Matt Klein, Klein Engineering. Our office is at 49 Immigration Street on the peninsula of Charleston. We have been working with John on this project for over a year, working to try to get parking for him and working working for John to try to get as much out of what his current lease states in the current situation, trying to make it as maneuverable as possible, and also providing options for him to work through. We were working for him to try to provide options in the current situation to allow for maneuverability, property sharing, that kind of stuff. There was shared parking. I'm not privy to all of those specific technical items, but our role until we started working with the city was generally to provide John the drawings for him to negotiate some of these items. Once it was apparent that there was going to be there is likely a change in ownership of the marina, different scenarios came into play. We were retained by the city to provide options on a main change to the marina parking, traffic solutions, those kind of things. Just for point of record, I am not quote unquote a traffic engineer.
Civil.
I'm a civil engineer. There's a pretty significant difference there. One does interstate design, and we don't do any of that.
Good.
So just a point of clarity there. So that's kind of where we.
Well, Matt, just for the record, what is your title? What are you
I'm a
certified?
professional engineer.
Okay.
There's no designation different in
Okay.
in the title.
Right.
It's just our specialties.
Got you.
My
Thank
specialty
you.
is land planning, which is applicable to this situation.
Right.
So long story short, we were retained by the city. We've gone through several options. I'm going to present some of these options to you guys for consideration and just kind of understand where we came from, how we got here. I have done some work with the marina proposed purchasers. Is that correct? And also, we have come to, we made a revision to those guys one time, but in general, they've been happy with the way that it lays out on their specific side. And we have been requested to start doing drawings to move that process forward as well, for them specifically. That said, I would like to go ahead and start letting you guys review kind of how we got here. If that's appropriate, Desiree, we can go ahead and start. Taking a look at kind of where this process kind of started. So, this was my first rendition. It was our first meeting with the city, with the Isle of Palms. This specific outcome, part of our goal system here was getting 12 trailer parking spaces, 24 regular parking spaces. Our initial idea was that we wanted to provide some golf cart parking in and out of this area. And this was our first kind of go at the situation. John pointed out accurately that this driveway is troublesome because angle parking specifically promotes you to drive in one direction, exiting the boat ramp. Obviously, you want to pull into these parking spaces. If you got exiting boat ramp, people trying to enter the
Matt,
restaurant.
do you mind zooming into that area just so that they can see,
Yes.
please?
You have to bear with me a little bit. I'm gonna use the touch screen here, and it's probably gonna be a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's much better.
But John pointed out that this is troublesome. This is a recipe for, you don't want people backing out into two-way traffic, entering, exiting this. So this became, in my opinion, kind of a no-go, kind of a not gonna happen. Don't really want that to happen. So that kind of ruled this out for all future. That was one of the items that we learned from this specific iteration, was that this driveway had to go toward, let's call it the main access, which I would say the main access kind of comes through here. This is existing road. Want to kind of keep it memorialized where it's currently located. So I will go to the next.
And this particular slide is not in the packet.
No,
Okay,
no.
all right.
No, I'm trying to
Okay.
intentionally go
You're,
through.
you're
some-
talking through the evolution of all of this.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is another rendition. I think this in general changed some of the proposed lease lines, similar concept. So this was our next kind of iteration of that specific concept, which we created two of. You'll see that we moved this. You'll see that we moved this driveway out beyond the trailer parking. We did lose 2 trailer parks for this, and we also identified these as city resident trailer parking lot for the trailers. And then this also provided, this was similar resident parking lot and city public parking lot, but not a substantial change to the design of the circulation of this of this parking lot. In this layout, the concern for John specifically, I believe, was that this was a little bit of a two things. This was it blocked some of the view corridor entering to the building. So it just, you're looking over boats and trailers and cars parked to see the marina restaurant.
Can you expand that one a little bit also? Can that be blown up a little more? Is that?
Yes. Sorry, when I print these, they're all going to be about the
Yeah.
same, but I'm happy to, I can.
There you go. That's
How's that
better.
work?
Thank you.
So this separates the entrance, which I think everybody liked. I'm pretty sure that everybody liked having separate entrances and exits for the city public resident parking lot and the Islander parking lot. I think that was something that everybody really liked. I think that part of the reason is because one of the concerns for Islander was if you get a 4th of July out there, they don't open, let's say, until 3 o'clock. If you got 4th of July out there, or let's call it any other Friday afternoon when it's beautiful, every available parking space in this marina is gonna be full at 11 a.m. and their tenants, they won't be able to have their parking per se. So the idea behind this separated access was to be able to isolate this parking lot from being able to be parked in until they open, so that they're
Guaranteeing their spaces.
yeah,
essentially.
kind of just so that they could serve people.
Uh-huh.
The next one has arrows pointing to like the flow of traffic. This one doesn't. Can you kind of show us how the flow of traffic would be on this one?
So it's a good question.
Just on the pages we have. The
No
one
problem.
labeled E has arrows. For me, it really helped me.
All right, so let me just go. I think we'll find that we'll get similar I'll continue, and then we'll go back
Okay.
to that, if that's all right with you. So, this next iteration, so one of the things that we did was we and you have to forgive me on the lease lines, on the red lease line. I think that I've missed that boat a couple of times on the drawings. We'll get that rectified at some point in time, but I think that's gonna be, I think that is what, we'll get that fixed, but I've been more concerned with the flow of traffic like you were mentioning. So in an effort to increase visibility of the restaurant here, we moved the trailer parking a little bit more opposite of these parks here. And we reduced the number of city resident trailer parks there, and we increased dramatically the Islander parking lot. We also drove one of the delivery trucks, which is not a full 18-wheeler, but it is a 48-foot trailer, which is a fairly large trailer for a delivery specific truck. I believe that we got that dimension from the Islander guys. I do believe that's larger than what would typically be used as a delivery truck, but I believe that they're having to use a larger delivery truck for this specific restaurant because it's of its isolation and the fact that they're going to deliver to downtown as well and then go out there. I think that's or they might be going to Wild Dunes.
So they have multi drop-offs is what you
Correct.
said, multi deliveries.
So it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit bigger truck, but the reasoning for that is because of the multi drop-off situation going all the way out there. And again, fighting through beach traffic to get out there with that truck, they're going to want to get out there, deliver to everybody out there on the end of the island. Okay. So problematic with this entrance or this layout was that we reduced the driveway for the city resident, city parking, and the Islander tenant spaces. We reduced that down to one driveway. They share this driveway, which the reason why we drew it was because we thought it was a kind of a continued straight movement here. But it is problematic. I don't believe it was desired. So we stepped back, I believe, from that layout. Was that one in your packet?
I think so. Not exactly the way that looks, but I think, is that not,
It's
is that C?
E.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay, so it's
But
similar.
basically that one would have sort of encroached into that other parking lot with the, delivery trucks.
So I think that so the
Yeah.
other one that we just showed was the delivery truck utilizing this E layout.
Mhm.
And that is this layout. This layout is got a very large amount of parking for the Islander use. It has the ability for a center aisle that they could block off and use for additional stacking in the event that they needed to do that. So that's the benefit of this layout to them. I think it's physically more parking spaces as well. And but the downside, I think, to this one, I think from the city's perspective, was that center, every car going in and out here, and they just turn to go into the Islander. I'll let the city and John speak to those specific wants, not wants. What I don't have that specific information, but that was the intention behind this. I'm not a huge fan of parking area, but it is what it is from a spatial perspective. It does create interflow, which I don't like dead end parking islands, dead end parking areas. They're troublesome if you go in there and you don't have a parking space. You have to back out or turn around inside of a parking lot. That's troublesome. So this does create some additional maneuverability. And I believe it's got about the same number of spaces.
Well, but there is a reduction on this with the
Right.
resident trailer parking.
Correct.
And it also, does it not eliminate the golf cart parking? From 8 to 5?
Yes, and so we kind of in the evolution, the golf cart parking became less important because in reality, golf carts are gonna park where they're gonna park. And they're not, and then also after hours, which the Islander, so the Islander guys, and they can speak to this if I'm wrong, but they were not, there was on the previous plan, there was 25 parking spaces shown for them, and they expressed that that wasn't necessarily as desirable for them just because they're open after dark and their main business is after dark. And in theory, they're not supposed to have golf cart parking after dark for their people. So they were, that it didn't make sense for us to take space for them. They would be able to park a few cars in there, but it wasn't a functional use for them.
Well, an LSV could drive after dark. Right?
That's correct. If they
Yeah.
have lights, they can.
Yeah,
drive at
and yeah, I'm just gonna throw this out here too. I mean, in terms of, golf cart's gonna park where the golf cart's gonna park, I agree with that to some extent. But also, I think, being a longtime resident and speaking on behalf of the residents I've talked to, I think we also want to acknowledge that we need to have, or really that they're looking for some designated golf cart parking.
Right.
That would be something where someone who is not a typical, I'm not gonna stretch it on the law thing, I don't want a ticket, but they have a designated place to park their golf cart.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's a great use of space in areas where that is what fits. Not to get onto the marina side, but you'll see that one of the we've got 15 parks right in front of the marina, kind of in a similar fashion
Mhm.
because that's what fit, and that's kind of our original when we originally did it. If a golf cart, golf carts can park a lot in a lot smaller area. The spaces for them are a quarter the size of a car space. The maneuverability is high. So in general, we they fit in a lot better spaces. So we try, but our goal with this specific plan was to maximize everything, and randomly enough, because of the drive aisle widths and the way that the geometry worked out, you can see that it hit like almost perfectly using full cars. So it was a better benefit to provide car parking because a car can park in a golf cart can park in a car space, but a car space can't park in a golf cart.
Right.
And I just want to highlight for the benefit, Councilmember Streetman. So the plan that Schuler has, that Matt has developed for Schuler includes 15 golf cart parking spaces along the store.
Right.
And also want to highlight that the city has designated the public right of way on 41st on the marina side. We have that area already today designated for golf cart parking only, and I believe we can fit about 9 or 10 there. So that's the first chunk of right of way
Right.
towards
That's,
the end.
and it's a fairly short walk, but for someone who is infirm or elderly or whatever else, they consider that quite a trek too.
Yeah, it's just, it's not showing in this plan, but just want to keep it in mind that we do have other areas along the marina that have been designated for golf cart parking as well.
And when I say that golf carts are going to park where they're going to park, that was more of a similar kind of mindset, was that we can refine a plan for golf carts to show specific golf cart parking locations in general. But our goal evolved into focusing on cars and cars and cars.
Mhm.
It was more about, it evolved to more of formal car parking lots. This does have the arrows. I do want to point out that the one-way traffic coming out of the flow of traffic in the marina side exiting, this became we talked about the evolution of this driveway and all this. The reason why that ended up being one way out, which made this a nice two-way driveway in to the city with this being the only turnoff. So this is the only turnoff right here to get into the marina. This is intended to be a gated area. This is This is trailer parking. You see how this arrow looks like it's backwards? It's not, it's trailers to back in here. So this is actually a gated area. This is an exit only. This is the marina exit. This is the city resident islander parking exit on this specific layout. I just want to point that out because that's not extremely clear.
Matt, can you do that same exercise on the other plan?
Yes, ma'am.
I think Ms. Myers was asking about that earlier.
So, I did,
Option C, I think it's the other one.
right? So we did, this, we didn't do a truck on this one, so we did a truck this morning on this one, just to make sure everybody could see the same truck on this specific plan. I believe this is John's first time seeing this on this specific. So we threw it together really quickly just to need to show what kind of turning maneuverability this plane had. But to the maneuverability side, again, the marina doesn't change. This is still the only driveway. The marina layout hasn't changed dramatically since all of the renditions of this specific area have changed. This has been very consistent, generally consistent. But this is a two-way drive here, and this would be two-way to here. You would have some backing into this intersection right here from these couple of parking spaces right here. But this would be a two-way drive here, two-way drive here, and this is one-way exiting right here. I could probably draw that, but is there any questions about that specifically? Again, this is a gated, this is intended to be boat storage. This is not transient boats.
And you say this was, you drew this up this morning?
Just the blue lines, just these little blue lines.
So that's,
The
that's,
blue lines.
that's the same you
Yeah.
have in your packet,
Right.
under C. He just drew up.
Line was added.
Be the-
There was a concern about, the delivery truck utilizing this specific. And so, like, for instance, we want to show that this delivery truck does in fact encroach into a couple of parking spaces right here. And then this specifically, this truck moves into these corner spaces, these white spaces. But I just wanted to show what it did.
Mhm.
But
And
it
this,
looks like it flows.
It does move around the circle, yes.
But if there's a car parked in that spot, then it's
If there
stuck.
was an overnight car in that spot, then there would be additional maneuverability.
and this is a 48-foot trailer?
It is a 48-foot trailer, yes.
So I agree with John on the first plan. First plan you showed, the only entrance in there is just a bad plan. So are we down to C and E?
That is,
Well, so C and E are the ones that, C, he developed under sort of our recommendation, our request. We really didn't know where to start. So we told Matt to start with, particularly with, when it comes to trailer parking spaces, we told them, why don't you design, whatever you think would fit the restaurant and accommodate at least 12 trailer parking spaces, because that's what there is there now. Obviously, the first iteration had 12, that shifted to 10 because of the moving of the entrance. But I understand that the restaurant has concerns about number C, version C. Their preferred option is E, which you have in your packets. I just wanted you all to see all the iterations that we've, worked with Matt back and forth and with John. But, I guess you all may want to hear directly from the restaurant about what their issues or concerns are with the option that has 10 trailer parking spaces. And I think that the guidance that we need to get from you all is, one plan has 10 trailer parking spaces, the other one has 5. When it comes to the number of resident-only parking spaces, I think the difference is about 2. One plan has 25, another plan has 27. Golf cart parking is also different in both plans. But the biggest, I think, to Rusty's comment earlier, it's a trailer parking. And, it might be that, the city doesn't think it needs 10 or 12. I just don't think that's up to us to decide. So we want to get some guidance. At least you're seeing some options that maximize parking for the restaurant, but may not meet the desires for trailer parking for the city.
Yes. Well, how many, John, do you know how many parking spaces he has? I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask John to come up in a minute. So if he's
So
away
the
from a,
I have the counts. So C has, for the restaurant, it's 105 car parking spaces and 25 golf cart parking spaces.
and
That's
for
option
which
C.
that's C.
That's C. In
How
the
many golf cart?
25 and 105 vehicular parking spaces.
Uh-huh.
And then for in the city lot side is 27 car, 9 golf cart, and 10 trailer parking spaces. And, I'm not including the 25 parking spaces that you can see shown along 41st Avenue.
Right.
That's a separate project. We got funding for it, but we don't know when that, we're hoping that that's going to be completed in a couple of years, but I'm
And that
not-
could change the entire dynamic at some
and,
point.
and that could change. Because it's not a
were just
done
showing
deal, we're just showing it for a conceptual conversation.
Mhm.
And then the second option, the E, includes 116 vehicular parking spaces on the restaurant side. No golf cart parking. 25 parking spaces on the city's lot. 5 trailer parking spaces and 5 golf cart parking spaces.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
All right, good. Okay, so Matt,
Yes, sir.
I guess, have you gone through this as much as you'd want to at this point?
Answer any questions that you have.
Okay, well, one question / observation I would have is that in looking at all this, and I know we've had a number of iterations, you've worked closely with John on this. And of course, the city's been involved to a large extent too. So do you think that there are any other available options that you might recommend that hasn't been considered at some point that we would need to take to council other than what we see here?
I think we have taken a broad stroke approach to this. I think that our decision making was a result of some of the constraints that we have been asked for, namely, I personally think that I like the controlled access here. One of our original plans, and I can show some of the work that I did with John prior to the working with the city. But I'd like for him I'll leave my computer up here, and if he wants to share that,
Right.
I'm happy for him to share that, and I'm happy to help him maneuver through my computer to get there. But there are some that have had more access points along this road. There are other options. They're just professionally, I like these 2 options that you have in front of you from an access perspective, a safety.
Any particular preference that you have on the 2 options? I'll put you on the spot.
Perspective, I believe they both function similarly. I don't have a real. This specific option right here, the concern that I have here is this backing maneuver. I mentioned that.
And that's option
This is option C.
C. Okay.
This specific option, I intentionally moved this driveway that I originally showed back because it wasn't. And then if you look at option E, it's completely resolved where this is opposite each other. So, but that said, I did an iteration where we, if you add trailer parks here, it reduces if you add the trailer parks here and continue down trailer parking here, you pinch this back in there and you end up with the C layout.
Mhm.
So there is I would say a hybrid of the two where you put 10 parking spaces in here. I would have to, I tell everybody, I've told Desiree, I've told John a million times, I have to draw it to be able to see it.
Right.
There, I think that, I don't know that this specific encroachment driveway situation was the preferred option for either the city or Islander. I would have to ask them to speak to
So all
that.
that to say, there could be another option, a hybrid of
There
the
could
two.
be a hybrid. I don't, I would, my opinion would be that we would need to aim at a number of parking spaces per se. And I would let them, I can draw until I can draw parking lot.
Okay, well, yeah.
It's really a number-based situation for me.
okay.
So it's, I hate to say that, but it is, there's always a number that you can hit and get there and then.
Fair enough, and thank you for that. I'd like to ask my colleagues here if they have any comments or any questions they have at this point. So Councilmember Myers or Popson, either of you'd like to weigh in, please do.
I mean, I guess the one thing I would say, I think a lot of people are focused on the trailer parking. And I'd just like to point out that before any of this happened, we didn't have any resident-only trailer parking, none. And the trailer parking that we had was shared among the tenants. So if however many spots you could get trailers in there was supposed to be shared. So yes, there is a decrease from 10 to 5, but we're still over the 0 that we had before. So I think that, I mean, from my looking at it, that's really the only drop is in the trailers. I mean, all the other resident parking stays about the same. With the exception of, I mean, golf carts, but as we've all experienced, I mean, you really can park a golf cart just about anywhere.
Highly maneuverable. What
I mean, when you go down to Front Beach on the weekends, there's golf carts parked in every conceivable spot, piece of land, and so far, we seem to be okay with that. So.
Okay. Anything else? Is that good?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yes,
Yeah, Mr.
Councilmember
Chairman.
Popson.
So, when Mr. Schuler first came to the table and said that we could get the shared parking back, that opened up everything for me, because these folks were having issues with shared parking with the current marina operator. That would go away. The employee parking, they were fighting or sharing with that as well. So all of that goes away. So this is just all really good. And my idea was to make sure it was a win for the restaurant and a win for the residents. I could live with either one of these. I would prefer C, because it still gives the restaurant 105 total spots, which is plenty more than what they have now. It gives us 10 spots to park trailers as the residents, and we get a few more resident parking in that area, and it's separated. It's their residents' own area without the traffic flow of E. So right now, to me, because I wanted the win-win for the restaurant to have as much and the residents as much, I'm kind of landing on C itself.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Popson. And I'll reserve my comments for right now. I guess what I would ask, Matt, again, we want to thank you for being here and walking us through that. And I would ask, Islander 71, I guess, John, are you going to represent? We'll call John Bushnell up and let him kind of speak on this subject as well and weigh in and sort of fill in the blanks, whatever. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So there are the two plans, I guess.
Your mic up.
Yeah. You're a tall guy.
The plan that you're looking at now is called version E, which is our preferred plan and the one that works for, I think, maximizing the most effective use of the space. I'll start off by saying there's really, I guess, we're trying to make this the most efficient for 4 uses. 1 is the green space, 2 is boat trailers, 3 is vehicles, and 4 is golf carts. So there's a lot to fit into a small area. So this, I think, is the most efficient plan. The other issue you also need to be aware of is for the zoning, for the compliance with zoning, I think we're required, a 323 seat restaurant, which is what the city put out the RFP for, is required to have 82 parking spots for customers. In addition, right now, currently, we have over 40 employees that are on one shift every night on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. I think the exact number is 42. We haven't even opened the second floor kitchen. So 42 is kind of the current number of employees every weekend night. In addition, we have the day employees that switch over. So in our employee lot, we're managing kind of the turnover. But the numbers you need to be aware of is 42 and employees in 82 customer required spots. The reason why this plan we think is the most beneficial is it provides for 20 feet of green space for the entire the intercoastal. It also provides for specific defined resident only or resident controlled parking spots, which includes both vehicle, golf carts, and boat trailer parking. The reason why this plan works for the restaurant is specifically because of that center lane. While there's only 29 designated spots there, by having that center lane, there's a controlled access point at either end where we can rope off or gate off so that we can double and triple stack employees, since employees' cars don't move during the shift, whereas the rest of the outside band can rotate and customers can drive around. So basically, we can close this off, and instead of having 29 spaces, you can get up to 42 spaces to fit all of our employees in the center aisle. And so, again, the reason for that is customers can come in and park wherever they'd like, but the employees won't leave during the shift.
Yeah.
That's why this is such a preferable layout for us.
I don't mean to
Definitely.
interrupt, John. Douglas needs to leave at 11, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to have him speak on the zoning question. Because
Yeah, and I was
that's
going to
not-
ask about the zoning question being addressed.
Okay,
Okay. Can we have Douglas, okay, Douglas, if you would speak to the zoning compliance issue, then I would appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So there are two kind of different scenarios as it applies to the zoning ordinance. First of all, the restaurant and the parking layout for the restaurant predated the requirements of the zoning code. So we, from the zoning standpoint, we have always looked at the restaurant and the spaces that were built when the restaurant was built as being a legal non-conforming, but compliant because it's predates the zoning code situation. So that's how we have always seen the zoning as it relates to that restaurant. But if you were to look at the requirement itself, we have always seen the requirement for that space as 102. If it was a brand new restaurant, we would say it needs 102, and that's a formula of the number of seats at 1 for 4 and 1 for 3 employees. I think John is saying 1 for each employee, but that's a different calculation. So I think you're speaking to what ideally you would have.
Zoning requirement, but just in terms of real world operationally, there's no public transportation down there. There's very few residents that work at the restaurant, so almost, well, I shouldn't say almost every single employee needs to get there by vehicle. So unless there's another option, I don't know how else they would be getting to work.
So just for clarity, it would be 102 if it was built brand new on raw land by our guidance. But we have seen that restaurant with that number of spaces as it exists as a legal compliant
entity. There's not a compliance issue, I guess, at the end of the day,
It's
either
basically-
way,
It's
but
basically grandfathered.
it's grandfathered, but even
It
if
is.
you,
However, I think that if you want to use our zoning requirements as the golden rule, because we have to start somewhere, right? We have to find what a reasonable number is. So if we use our current parking requirements by our zoning code, the formula for what we would require in a new restaurant in that location would be one parking space per 4 seats. So they've indicated they have 323 seats, so that would be 81, 82. And then one parking space per 4 employees.
Total employees or employees there at a given moment?
at
It
the,
says at the highest shift. So if he has 40, I guess the difference between on both plans, I think that the number on number C, which is what has the lowest number of parking spaces for the restaurant according to these plans, 24, 25 parking spaces would be compliant if we're looking at our zoning code for 70 employees, because it's one for 4 employees. But again, that's not a requirement because of what Douglas explained, but it could be a golden rule if we were to look for one.
So that's our rule, but in what John's speaking to is kind of like the optimal.
Clearly more is better.
Yeah.
And he's right about all the considerations when it comes to operating a restaurant, but again, it just looking at the numbers and looking at the zoning requirements for parking for a new restaurant in that location, the total would be 102.
So from a zoning standpoint, there's no issue.
and I would just, I guess, further the point by saying the way the zoning code works, if you lease an establishment, it has a certain number of spaces. You may be limited in how many seats you can add. You can't, as a leaseholder of a restaurant, you can't add seats or add employees and then come back and say to the city and say, well, hey, now we have we're in an odd situation because we're the landlord and the zoning administration arm, but you can't put the city in a bind by adding seats or adding employees and then coming back and saying, we have a zoning compliance problem because I've added seats or added employees. That makes sense. It just doesn't work that way. We would stop the number of seats or the number of employees. And frankly, we thought that and I haven't gone back or done the counts, but I've always been under the impression that the restaurant was actually shrinking from the old Morgan Creek Grill layout. I was thinking it was supposed to be less seats, but maybe, again, I haven't gone back and studied that point, but that was my impression at the time.
I think
Okay.
you may be remembering the initial conceptual design was a 6,000 square foot.
Okay.
Designed the building to what the request was, to the existing size that it was. And number 2 is, we're not adding seats or employees. We're telling you that there's going to be upwards of 60 employees once we open the second floor. What there is currently already is 42. And we didn't add seats. This is what we responded to the city's based RFP, so I'm not sure.
How many employee parking spots are there right now?
Currently, I think we have, we've double stacked, so same issue
Right.
where we have 30 defined spaces, but then we could have another, 15 plus cars in the middle by blocking everyone in.
And that's why I think for them, it's important to have the capability to stack somewhere inside what would be their exclusive lot to amount for the stacking, which they currently only have in the private lot at the back.
So again, this is our preferred plan that, and I think it accomplishes all of those goals of green, the 20 feet of green space, specifically defined resident-only parking for cars, for boat trailers and for golf carts. It provides the turnarounds for the 18-wheelers, and it provides for an area that we can block off for employees. So that's the reason why we brought this to council.
Is there
Okay.
any reduction in the green space between E and C?
No.
So it's the same.
That the more I sit here and look at this, I want to make sure that it's clear that I really like the safety of the back, this in single entrance. And I would say that from my perspective, I would,
That microphone towards you, Matt.
Sorry.
There you go.
I would ask that it be spoken to about this specific driveway access for both lots. Make sure that that's desirable for both people or, because this is a good solution, for trailers backing in, the backing opposites.
Can you
Yes,
explain that? I don't see the.
I would like
difference,
to.
When it comes to
I would-
safety, I
I
don't,
would like to.
thank you.
So that's why I felt like I didn't,
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't answer your question earlier. This, so if I'm parked in this parking space right here and there's a car pulling out right here, I'm going to be backing. There could be a chance that I back into this driveway as a user of this parking space. If I'm on here on a Saturday, this is available. I'm gonna back into this. This car is coming around here out of this corner, this is not advantageous to
It's
have.
almost like a blind corner.
It's,
that-
maybe it's not, let's maybe not call it blind per se, because it really only applies to these two parking spaces, but it's a concern of mine. It's just not, it's not something, you're not having like cons back against like cons. But the advantage of this layout, again, is that it has its own entrance to the city public resident parking lot, which is the disadvantage of the other one. And the other one, that is seen as a advantage in a space. So you're gaining a lot of parking in general because you only have this one driveway. And the way that I saw it was that it was an extension of this road. These golf cart parkings being the only new engagement on this right of way kind of thing, where it just extends out. So, does that answer, does that help at all? Because in reality, this is a nice plan. From a civil engineering perspective, this is a nice plan. It does allow for additional maneuverability. The circle is bigger. The truck is going to get through this plan a lot better. Just because this other side is tight.
I guess the biggest difference is in this plan, the restaurant, the Islander 71 parking lot gains 11 spots for, and we lose 5 trailer parking spots.
And it flows over into what is considered the private lot. Somewhat,
Well,
right?
There is
you're kind of combining the entrances, right? But
Yeah.
that, when you look at the numbers, that's really the difference. In terms of car parking spaces for the restaurant, we go from 25 to 26. So talk about 2
I
differential.
would say that this is a maneuverable, more maneuverable on the city parking just for the circular aspect here.
With emphasis being on the 48-foot truck access, ingress, egress.
I don't know that the truck is not in what I'm considering the truck only because it's easier to move around a bigger circle. And that's just,
But that seems to be one of your major points you're making here.
I think John is,
Okay. Well, we'll let John, Councilmember Myers, was there any follow-up on what you brought up? Yeah,
Yeah, and I think what you were just talking about, which didn't have anything to do with trucks, was the fact that in this plan, the residents can pull in and pull out in a circle without having to back up. All the way out into that main road where there's trucks and trailers and, right. it sounds like it's definitely a win for both safety when it comes to Mr. Schuler's parking lot, safety in our resident parking. And especially when you start to think about, and I don't know, actually I know we're not talking about the green area, but is there a bike entrance to this anywhere? I know at one point that was discussed, but is there any thought to people on bikes?
We added that late. There is a sidewalk shown down at the bottom here for access.
Okay.
When most of the bikes that come to the marina come down here to this corner.
Mhm.
And I do quite often.
They're gonna find a place to park.
Well, no, I'm not talking about parking for bikes. I'm talking about them getting in there.
I don't think there's,
I know bike parking's not an
we intentionally did not remove any of the 20-foot green space for any of the plans. We did actually try to do it, to add some parking, just to try to take some of these angles away. I don't think that any of them actually encroached into that 20-foot area.
Yeah, and if you notice, where the public dock is going to land, see how there is a little bit of a, like a landing area?
Mhm.
That both plans actually protect that. We're aligning the public docks, right now has a little bit of a kink
right.
to one side, so since we're redoing it, we're aligning it, and it falls right kind of in the corner of what would be the city's parking lot, and then it's continuous to all along the bulkhead. And we've talked about, our plan to pipe all of 41st Avenue. And conceptually, we have those 25 parking spaces there, but, we haven't really spent a whole lot of engineering time in trying to accommodate like a pathway, and we've talked about that. A pathway that's on the other side of of parking that leads all the way to the green space.
Exactly. So there is another added advantage to this plan, which we can talk about right now, but also from where we are currently to where this is, it goes from 16 resident only spots to effectively 40 because there's 30 cars and golf carts and then 5 boat trailers, which is really 2 spots. So we're going from 16 now to 40 spots kind of on a macro level. In addition, we're getting the 20 feet of green space. But the real key to this plan is having that defined space where there's no more shared concept where even if it's shared or resident-free parking, there might not be a spot for them because it's taken up by a different use. So now we have resident-only, resident-specific parking, and we're giving up the rights to the shared lot and basically trading the employee lot for the portion of the shared lot. The last point on this plan, which we have not discussed, but we would like to have you guys be aware of, is that in the future, if you decided to pipe this portion like you did here, you could then also probably have enough space to have more vehicle traffic, potentially trailer parking, because there'd be a wider turning radius. You could enter in and then exit out down to the front of the ditch. So we threw it in up here with this total 5 trailer parking that's intended to
5, 25.
But the same thing to be done up here, also in the future, add even more space to park resident only parking.
Yeah, that's possible, future state, couple of years or whatever.
Well, that
Uh,
is the plan.
ahead.
I mean, we are intending to do that, are we not?
We are intending to pipe all the way to the end of the road. So that is where that curve starts. That's what we got funding for. The remaining is not contemplated in any plan. It is doable. We've run some numbers. It's gonna be about 500, 600,000 just to pipe that additional portion. But that is an option. We just don't, that's not part of the plan or the funding that we have today. It's all the way up to that end of
So
40.
what we
the
see
road.
on here is funded,
Correct, that's right.
even though.
Even though it's not
Not
done,
technically
but
there.
it is,
It's-
and that's why I asked him to draw it up, because
Right.
now that we got funding, we don't know when it's gonna happen. Obviously, that's our plan is next year, but the other portion of the ditch that's not shown there, it's not funded or contemplated.
Restricting some of that movement along this ditch is a 10-foot buffer. that I believe is gonna be put in. So I don't, from a, you know, again, kind of the downside of this is the singular access. I don't know, I don't know if who was opposed to that specific item. But that is the downside of this specific, the trailer parking and the 5 removed trailer parks and the singular access for city and Islander, people that come there. So.
Yeah, that would be, I guess, that if you're looking for the downside, and some of what I've heard from other council members is a concern about the reduction of trailer parking spaces. I obviously understand we have now a number, but that's shared. It's not exclusive to residents. This would be. And then the fact that having the entire driveway for both uses, kind of bifurcating what would be the city's lot and limiting that. But obviously we heard about what I guess the cons on the other side with the backing of trailers and less maneuverability. So I think at the end of the day, we're really looking at that reduction in trailer parking spaces and the entrance component.
Okay. John Bushnell, any further comments before we have a little more conversation here with the council members? Okay, Matt, anything? All right. Councilmember Popson, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in?
I don't have any more questions, and I think I already kind of shared my comments. I'm kind of landing more on C. I just like the separation of the resident area. I think and we get the more trailer parking. It looked like the flow was good with C. Maybe there was that one parking space or that island that could be shrunk that maybe needs to be looked at a little bit, but I'm still kind of landing on C.
Okay.
On this one, we have 105 total spots. If you just add our 42 employees, you'll no longer be able to be segregated. It leaves about 63 customer spots, which is below the zoning number, but regardless. And then again, these spaces in here for the restaurant, when it's usually after dark, when most of the dinner time crowd are not really a benefit or use to us. So, I mean, I wish we could have 25 employees that lived on the island that could drive their golf carts to work, because then this would work. But this is really not an option for us, just in terms of the way it's designed. So, I just wanted to let you know our opinion on that, or why we have the alternative option.
Okay. Are there other options on employees, like shuttling them in rather than having them all drive in? I mean, that's something that can be done by some businesses do that.
Concerns brought up to the city from doing the shuttle
Mhm.
line prior to us.
Well, back with Morgan Creek Grill and the marina, summers or seasons past, they have been doing that. There was a time when they were using the rec center parking on 27th Avenue as the landing. And because it was in a residential neighborhood, that was, we said, do it. If we have some issues, well, we're going to have to reevaluate. We had issues, we had to reevaluate. So we made the parking area in front of the Public Works spot, workshop. We have about 25 spots there.
Right here.
Right
where the
here.
Public Works.
And City Hall available on the weekends. We don't have any activity here. So, I've always, and even the folks at Front Beach, whenever their employees come in at 2:00 on a Friday or Saturday in the summer, they don't find any parking, we make, this is available. So
So
we've
there
got to
are,
offer
there are options available should there be a way found to shuttle employees if need be.
shuttling employee, it is something that, a lot of people do because of, the peninsula, you think about the trolley that runs around, bringing employees in. It's for the restaurant operations, what I I've heard from folks is that because of the different shifts, it is complicated. It has been done. I think that when there's a need, there's a will. But it is complicated. And I think that employees, sometimes, I guess folks have so much trouble finding employees that making it a little bit harder is enough for somebody to select one job over the other. So I think that there's things that we need to think about and acknowledge. But the Council of Governments have a van pool program that we've kind of, shared with not only the restaurant, but everybody on the island as an option where they provide a vehicle for shuttling employees because it is a regional issue. It's not,
Yeah.
we deal with it every day, obviously, when it comes to parking here, beach parking, commercial parking, but it's an issue that's really, really affecting everybody downtown Charleston and as the region grows.
And I
Okay.
think Wild Dunes actually said that was what they were gonna do originally, and that we can all see that there's 5 no longer tennis courts that are parking for employees, and that's exactly why, because they could not get employees that wanted to be shuttled, because employees have children, families, somebody gets sick, you can't rely on a shuttle. People are gonna take, if you have the option of working at Wild Dunes and parking on what used to be tennis courts, or in your own car, or having to take a shuttle to work at Islander, you're gonna pick Wild Dunes. So I would. So,
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't really like to play a home movie, but I was in a business before where we operated supermarkets that had well in excess of 100 employees, particularly during the summer months and places like Hilton Head and areas like that. And we, on a routine basis during the high season, shuttled employees. It can work. It's not perfect. No, I don't think any solution or any recommendation here is going to be perfect, but I see it as a possible option in regards to particularly the high season when there's more demand. And if we have options on parking, such as the Public Works area and City Hall on the weekends, that might be something to look into if I was a restaurant operator. We certainly did it when we operated supermarkets with a number of them in resort areas, Hilton Head, and even Myrtle Beach in some areas there too. Okay, so my thoughts, there's things about both of these plans I really like. I think it really kind of presents some possible solutions here that would be good, not only for the restaurant, but for the city, for the residents. And it really looks like that Matt and John and city weighing in some too, that there's been a lot of thought and effort put into all of this, and we really appreciate that. That being said, I prefer option C. And I think that's a good compromise to start with. And basically, my recommendation, I guess in the form of a motion, would be that we go to full council and recommend that council look at option C. And that also, if Mr. Klein, as we asked earlier, comes up with any other option that might be viable for us to look at when we have council meeting next week, that we could do that as well. Would that be accurate, Desiree, to make a motion in that form?
I think they wanna.
Take the microphone, please, and identify yourself, Mr. Okay.
Representative, and I wanted to address it. I appreciate your comments about option C. One of the things that hasn't been ferreted out is that it just doesn't work for the restaurant. And we're in a position where we're trying to figure out something that works better for the city. The whole idea about switching the parking from the old tidal wave lot, which is the employee parking lot that Islander has now, and it has it under contract until the expiration of their lease. And switching that to some capacity with the shared parking. And at that point, giving up all rights to the shared parking, that was an idea the Islander had because they thought it would benefit the city public. It would give them a parking lot next to the dock. And at the same time, it would allow the restaurant to have a consolidated parking lot, which they could then split money on to fix up and to organize in a manner that would put them in as good a position as they are in now. The problem with option C is it doesn't put them in as good an option as they have now. You know, for example, shuttling employees back and forth. If they have to shuttle employees back and forth, the concern is they're going to lose employees. We have beach traffic, and right now they have ample parking at the restaurant. As we sit here today, they have the employee parking lot, they've got the restaurant parking lot, and in between is the shared parking, which they have the right to share. And because of what's happened with the marina, they have ample parking to survive right now if they do nothing. The city wants to provide to the residents, and all of the Islander owners are residents. They want to provide to the residents parking that allows them to park next to the docks. But it has to make sense for the restaurant, and it doesn't make sense if it's going to put the Islander in a worse position than it is in right now. So the idea in coming here today and listening to the presentation that Mr. Klein gave is to see if we could proceed under the mechanism that makes sense for the restaurant, or if we can come up with another plan, and a plan that would afford them an isolated parking where they could put their employees in and have all of the restaurant customers in. Because one thing we know for sure is once they give up the right to share parking, there's no more parking out there. The marina has its share of the parking. The city, we anticipate, is going to designate parking to the residents, which the residents have never had before. They just haven't. They've always wanted it, but they've never had it. And the idea is to give the residents that piece of parking that they don't have. And at the same time, to make sure the restaurant's not going to get hurt. While I certainly respect why you believe that C works better than the option they're proposing, it's not an option that works for the restaurant. And so I don't want to go through the process of voting to recommend C and then have the restaurant surprise you down the road and say it doesn't work for us, which is why I wanted to stand up now and tell you it just doesn't work. Perhaps there's another alternative that Mr. Klein can come up with, or perhaps you would reconsider with the understanding as to why it doesn't work. You'll reconsider the other plan that's been presented that does work for the restaurant, because they're more than happy to relinquish all rights to their money. And they're willing to spend money which benefits the city to redo parking or to fix it up or to reframe it to the extent they can to make it better. But it needs to make sense for them. So before you have a motion to recommend C, I wanted you to know in advance why it doesn't work. And that it's not a viable option for the restaurant to have. And they'd be better off right now where they are, although they don't think that where they are is the best thing for them, and they certainly don't think it's the best thing for the residents of the city. So there's an option now to consider it differently, and we would ask that you would do that under advisement, or at least discuss it amongst yourselves.
So, and maybe it would be helpful, you know, if we were to ask Matt to go back to the drawing board and see if there were, I know there's been 10 iterations, but if we knew, you know, I guess it's kind of a guessing game as to what is the city willing to accept, right? What is the magic number? That's what we struggled with, and we just didn't think that it was should be our, you know, our say. We said start with where we are today, right? And kind of go from there. I guess it would be helpful to go through the exercise of what does the city want to see there? Obviously, the trailer parking is a big component there. For the restaurant, we would also need to know what are your wants, and that may be different than your needs, right? It would be ideal to have a ton of parking, but what is reasonable? And, you know, is a reasonable start is the zoning code, right? The zoning requirements, which again is one for 3, 1 for 4 seats and 1 for 3 employees. Certainly that only generates about 25 parking spaces for 70 employees. I don't know, but we can't use the zoning as a requirement because it's a legal non-conforming use, but it could be a start. It doesn't seem to me that is acceptable for the restaurant though, because of the challenges with employee parking, and they want to maximize employee parking. I do think it's because of the space of the site. I don't know if it's realistic or achievable to have one parking space for each employee. Um, I don't know. I think that's, I guess, the exercise that Matt can draw up. But we need to know what those numbers are. And when we know what those are, Matt can go in and say, I can draw it up. It works, it doesn't, and where it doesn't work. But like, I guess we're all gonna continue to keep guessing, looking at different plans.
I mean, I don't think that this is really, we've heard very clearly from the restaurant that they much prefer E. And if they don't end up with something that puts them in at least as good a standing as they have today, with E, then they're just not going to do it. This is a negotiation. Both sides have to agree on this. We as a city can't force them to do anything. We can't force them into C. And I'd like to point out that in the big, huge green area down there, they used to share in the shared parking. And now they've gotten that more space. They've taken more control over what used to be the marina, in that they get their own entrance and all of that. And there's no designated resident parking in there for trailers. So, you know, they're giving 5 trailer spots at least. That's more than the marina is giving. So, you know, and I've heard the only positive I've seen in C over E is the trailer parking. That's it. The whole entire giant south end of the marina is a humongous space, and it's got space for trailers also. So I think if we get hung up on 5 trailer spots, you know, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. We're going to end up with nothing. So, and I heard loud and clear that for 2 different reasons, E is safer for drivers and trailers and everybody else. So E gives us more safety, less liability for the city, better ingress, egress for the trucks, better employee parking, better for the restaurant. I mean, 5 trailer parking spots is what we're talking about, that we never had a single one. So I don't.
Well, you're driving everything through the resident area, where in C.
It's the entrance though. I
In-
mean, it's an entrance. I mean, you're driving, everything's coming through that one street. I mean, it's not like you're driving everything all the way to the water. You're just coming right through the entrance. That's the only part of the resident parking that's being used. It still has that big area in the back that's going to be green space, and it's going to look nice, and it's got a nice traffic flow. You know, you're not going to have people coming in and backing out and running into each other. And
So, are we going, I'm prepared to second the motion. But if we want to delay and let Mr. Klein come back with maybe another, plan for us to look at, I'd be okay with that too.
so what happens if we recommend C and it goes to council and city council votes on it and the restaurant won't agree to it, then we have a document.
Then we go back to it, we stay the way we are. That's the risk. So,
That's what they're telling us that's.
well,
what
that
they're-
may be, at the end of the day, that may be. I'm not going to make conjecture on that. I will say that
don't
the
think it's-
recommendation, and I'm going to call the question here. We've had a lot of discussion. The recommendation in my motion, the full council, is that we recommend option C, but we also allow for Mr. Klein to come back to us if there's any other options that he thinks could work, and that to be presented at city council meeting on the 25th.
For us all to collectively work together, we don't know the direction. Well, why is C better?
I have called the motion.
And I second it.
All right. Any further discussion?
Why would we not bring both C and D to council then? If we're asking him to come up with a plan that we've never seen before. why
Yeah,
don't we
I'm
take both of them?
So y'all have a motion on the table to recommend C, but also part of that motion is for Matt to develop to see whether there's another option.
As we ask him, is there another option to consider? And he implied that if he has numbers that he's looking at, there are other things that he could look at. And he's nodding his head out there. So I'm assuming that I'm accurate in that statement. Okay.
But I think you have to tell him the numbers you want.
Make the statement, Mr. Klein, if you would, while we're right here before a vote.
The the other option, in my opinion, would come as an extension of E in reality. Because all I would be trying to do is add trailer parking to E in order to satisfy a number that council would like to see as far as trailer parking. I would back into a number on using the E access because of the items that Ms. Meredith mentioned. As far as like safety in the backing, in the circular, on the employee, all of those items, in my opinion, are that make that specific option better. The trailer parking specifically on C is the advantage here on C.
Okay.
I believe, I don't want to oversimplify because this is very, very, there's a lot of moving parts. I'm not trying to oversimplify.
So
No.
Matt, are you saying that you can develop a plan using E as a starting point, which is the combined entrance that maximizes, that adds trailer parking spaces to that version?
I mean, I could add one and see what that does, and then add two and then see what that does. At some point in time, the geometry changes where that first driveway is no longer nice, and it no longer functions as a circular motion.
So, and is it acceptable for the restaurant for the city to say, okay, use the zoning code as your guide to determine the number of parking spaces that need to be accommodated? Because if we're assuming that we're starting from scratch, and Douglas said 102 spaces is what you all would be required to have, I don't know the answer to that. That's why I guess we need to give guidance to Matt on both sides. Sure. I mean, up to the chair, but.
Dave from Islanders 71. To me, just listening, I think one of the challenges we have is the city hasn't said how many trailer parking spots you need. So it sounds like it's difficult for Matt to design anything if he needs 5, 10, 15, whatever it is. As a restaurant, we kind of know what we need. Zoning will say 102. That doesn't work in the real world with restaurants. We have a place downtown we're looking at. It says we need 30. The reason is because there's other parking downtown. At the marina, that's it, because we can't park in the neighborhoods. So you're kind of limited to this space. So 102 is great, but it might not be realistic for the goals, of the restaurant and all that. So I think to me, just my comment is we've got to understand how many, spots the city is wanting to let Matt do his job.
Matt, if you would get to the microphone, please.
Further that, just so everybody's clear, I want to make sure that I'm being as clear as I could be and I want to make sure the city staff also agrees that I would add any trailer parking spaces to the E layout to maximize just for the maneuverability that we have discussed. I just want to make sure that that's amenable to the city as well, because
What I'm hearing is that what I think people are liking about C is the trailer parking, and also I think that the separation of the entrances, but we've kind of talked about maybe the benefits of combining the entrances. So if the remaining issue to be solved is the trailer parking number, that maybe 5 may not be sufficient, then I think that whatever plan you deem appropriate that meets safety, that meets, turning radius necessary for the maneuverability, I really think the crux of it is the trailer parking. That's what I think I'm hearing.
But Mr. Popson, yeah, he mentioned specifically the separated entrances, I believe. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
And so I
I
want to make
like
sure that you're aware that if I was to go down that road, that I would choose that singular. And if that's a design criteria that you don't want to see, then I would need to know that.
Well, I mean, I'm open to look at another plan that might work. So I'm open to that, but we've got to look out for the best interests of the residents here as well. And by getting 10 trailer spots and a few more spots in the privacy of the resident under C just works better in my mind. And I obviously people disagree with that, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, any other comments? Nicole, would you try your best to read what our motion is on the table, please?
You've made a motion to, for option C, to bring option C to city council and also have Mr. Klein bring any other option to city council as well. And I'm assuming that option is going to be based on conversation post motion.
All right, so we've had a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
I will be in touch, Matt, with you and John.
All right, our next item is item B, which is discussion of proposed amendments to Islander 71's lease on items that we received by restaurant tenant marker 116. So that will be our second order of business here. And what I would like to do, Desiree, do you have any open comments? Because I definitely do want to get to Mr. Bushnell or whoever's going to represent Islander 71 on this to walk through these various recommendations. Anything
I
that
don't
you
I don't
wanted
have
to
any
add before?
comments. You have in your packets what we've received from them and just to clarify what I attempted to do by adding section pages from their existing lease is since we didn't have a red line, wanted to make it easier for you all to look at what they're proposing in light of what's there now. There are some sections that are new, but you know, it'll be an exercise that you're gonna have to kind of go back and forth. I know it's not convenient, but and I think I heard earlier from the restaurant folks that they're only wanting you all to consider some of the proposed amendments at this time. So I think we just need to hear from them what those are so that you can deliberate and make a recommendation if
All
you
right,
all.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so I'm going to recognize whoever wants to speak for Islander 71 on this matter here. So thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Rusty. Yeah, so the proposal that, we're asking for, there's been, I need to first clarify when you talk about alcohol licensing, you really have three. There's beer and wine, there's liquor by the drink, and then there's Sunday liquor license. So there's three that you get as a restaurant. And so what we're asking for in the proposal, just to simplify it, is to give Islander 71 marker 116 exclusivity for liquor by the drink. So that's, which is all we're asking for, which basically, is keeping the restaurant a restaurant and keeping the marina store a deli or whatever. It serves beer and wine. We're not asking to take that away or anything like that. We're just asking to add to our lease exclusivity of liquor by the drink, which is the way the South Carolina Department of Revenue classifies hard liquor.
Spirits, basically.
Spirits, correct.
Okay. And
Dave, do you mind restating what the three different licenses? Beer and
It's
wine.
Beer, wine, liquor by the drink, and then there's a Sunday liquor license that you apply for that allows you to sell both
On
on Sunday.
so that's the only deviation from the original lease you're asking for?
Right.
And again, I mean, the only other additional is when and if we agree on a different parking layout. He left it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I want that. He was so excited to get out of
When and if that time comes, then there will be necessary amendments to the restaurant lease to memorialize whatever parking changes are agreed to, but that
But today.
we have to agree on.
Right now, today, all we're talking about is liquor by the drink.
Yeah, the parking and then liquor by the drink. Y'all already
Well,
moved on
well,
from
the parking
parking.
we
and
don't
now
know
we're just
yet,
talking
exactly.
But you're,
liquor
you're
by
talking
the
about exclusivity for the spirits or liquor by the drink for
the
restaurant only
Yep.
and
For the-
also the,
for
and
the-
also the Sunday permit.
Yeah.
Which would
For-
include that.
yeah.
So you have to, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't have the Sunday. stuff.
Correct.
You gotta go with liquor by the drink.
Right. But no restriction on beer or wine. Just hard spirits.
So
To
not,
us creates keeps it, us being a restaurant, the other, establishment, again, not the current, talking future, that it wouldn't become another bar and then you create a bar zone down there, a bar district and all this kind of stuff. We're saying, hey, you have one
Mhm.
restaurant that has exclusive liquor by the drink. That's all we're asking for.
And I know this is sounding really silly, but we're just talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Obviously, but
so,
the whole property.
So I'm referring to the document that y'all gave us. Is the section that your recommendation to amending section 702 the same? Because I think that the document that you given us also would prevent or limit pre-made or canned alcoholic beverages. Is that also
You would have to have the same license
for the liquor?
for a canned liquor drink. So it
Okay.
doesn't,
State doesn't care how it gets made, who makes it.
So if,
Right.
okay.
If
okay,
it's
so-
got liquor in it.
It's considered a fortified.
correct. Right
Yeah,
now,
you don't
there's,
get it at the liquor
So
store.
it rises to the level.
yeah,
of-
right now there's called ready to drink cocktails, which are not seltzers. That's different. They're in a can and actually have hard liquor in them.
Mhm.
And you can't buy them in the grocery stores. You have
I
to
don't
buy
know
them.
anything.
So that,
Yeah.
that would be under that same just, liquor by the drink,
Can't buy
which
them
is
at
hard
Harris
alcohol.
Teeter.
Right.
All right. And so
Um,
other than that's it from,
So I guess I'm just going to ask a question real quickly. So what kind of implications does this have for anything that is currently in place for the Marina store, that lease there? I mean,
And
is this
that's
is this
why-
something, I guess what I'm asking, is this ask here something that would make us or have us go back to, the Marina Joint Ventures or the Marina, Store, whatever we call that entity these days? Do we have to go back and renegotiate part of their lease as a result of what this ask is?
I don't know. I think that's why we probably want to hear from Brian Kitts. He
Okay.
worked on both of those documents.
Right,
My understanding is that the amendment that council approved for Schuler as part of the assignment only allows him to sell beer and wine, which would limit him to beer and wine. Therefore, I'm not sure legally if there is a need or did, just makes sense to
Right.
include it in an amendment, but I would feel more comfortable letting our
Right.
attorney.
and that's something that we can ask in open session without any
I don't know, I
executive
don't think
session, I think.
I don't know when I'm allowed to speak. and
No,
not.
not
I
in,
know the answer to the question. I just don't know if I can provide it now.
And is it over? Okay,
And we can, how about we pull out the approved language of the.
okay, why don't we,
amendment? That's.
yeah,
not-
okay.
that's right.
I'm pretty sure that when you go to and. I'm looking past you. Hidden in plain sight. When you go to the state to ask for your license, I imagine they probably ask, what does your lease allow for? So, if the lease says-
Seating requirement, there's a lot
the
of
lease
things to
says-
get liquor versus beer and wine. It's much more strenuous process.
So if the lease says beer and wine, the state's probably gonna be like, "Mm, you can't have liquor," would be my guess.
well, no, it's all up to the state and they have different requirements. Seating is one, your menu is one. I mean, there's a lot of different things. It opens another can of worms. Insurance is another big one. Again, I don't know with marinas and if they're allowed to have hard liquor and stuff like that. The state looks at it so much differently than beer and wine.
So I guess to your point, if Schuler's lease says only beer and wine, he would not be authorized by the city, at least, to get any other license than a beer and wine license.
And I also feel like it would make it a lot harder to go to the state and say that you wanted more than what your lease allows. for.
That's right.
Yeah, so with respect to alcohol sales, the marina store lease as amended, as will be amended, allows for the sale of beer and wine for on-site consumption, does not allow for the sale of alcohol, hard liquor.
Or fortified wine or anything that qualifies
wine.
as a spirit.
Not
Yeah.
beer or wine, they can't sell
Right.
for
So that's
any
clear.
alcohol, and they
Okay.
can't sell for non-
All right.
drunk
Yeah, it
Okay.
Wouldn't violate
Just wanted to,
their lease if we.
just
had
wanted to make
the
sure
same.
on that because I want to have to recreate another wheel. All right. That
I
it,
like
Dave?
I know when we talked to Schuler, I don't know if it's changed, but he was not planning on selling hard alcohol there anyway. So this was
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
it should be a layup for us.
Thank you for your comments. Council members? Hey, Councilmember Myers?
As long as it doesn't open up a can of worms on the Schuler end of it, I'm okay.
Well, now the can of worms is also in the lease. you know. So,
They have to be
Yeah.
licensed.
Yeah, they have to.
the other lease, not the restaurant lease. All right. Well, I think,
Do we have to make
yeah, we need to make
a motion?
yeah, would you-
This is to propose to take to full council proposal that, I'll make a motion that we propose to recommend to full council that we approve the 7.2 amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know if we can
or
quite,
just the
7.2
sorry.
contains a lot.
A
more.
lot
I'm
of other
sorry,
things.
just the this exclusivity of
Liquor. by the
liquor by the drink for Islander 71 at the marina location.
really, I
At the
guess
marina
liquor,
property.
I guess really liquor license, right? You know,
Issuing the license.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Liquor
don't
by the
issue the
drink.
license. I think that what a motion could be is to recommend to council that our legal team develop an amendment to the Islander Marker 116 lease that includes an exclusive liquor by the drink license,
Perfect.
Is that good?
something like that,
Well said.
very legally.
Well, it's probably not licensed, probably. Just the exclusivity of liquor by the drink.
Is that good with you, council member? Okay, all right.
I'll
So,
second it.
all right, second there. Any further discussion? No need to reread that, I don't think. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. No opposed. So there you have it. All right, let's see. Where we at? I think we're down to,
Done. You're
yeah,
done.
we're down to
That's it.
done. We're down to motion to adjourn. So there's no need for executive session here today. And do I hear a motion?
Motion to second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.